Hello, Red Sox fans. Welcome back to another Talk Sox video. I wish we were coming to you with better news, but by now you have all probably seen the video of Triston Casas, his knee buckling at first base and going down and seeing just a horrific injury happen. He is most likely out for the season. I mean, he's probably out for the season, but
He's
I'm no
out
doctor.
of
He
season.
I listen, I'm no doctor. I just work in sports, but he has a ruptured tendon in his left knee, and let's talk about it. Brandon, you're up.
Yeah, it's tough. He obviously, as everyone around here knows, he wasn't performing that well. That he's been a above average hitter throughout his entire career. He's had some really, really nice seasons. 2023 was obviously sort of his breakout year. He was definitely struggling. It looked like he was maybe putting the pieces back together before the injury, but obviously now he's out for the season. And so it's also worth pointing out that that pushes off, the Triston Casas question that was being asked. Do the Red Sox trade him for pitching? What is his trade value right now? And so that sort of delays that process. But in the here and now for 2025, it does open up a really interesting question about the first base position. The talk right now is maybe Rafael Devers gets moved there. We talked in another video about why we don't necessarily think that's the best idea for him, just because he's thriving at DH, and why interrupt his rhythm right now. But either way, it is going to be an interesting situation because you know there are first base options out there. If the Red Sox don't like their in-house stuff, Anthony Rizzo's still a free agent. Justin Turner on the Cubs is sort of wearing out his welcome over there. He's obviously a fan favorite here in Boston. Maybe the Red Sox trade for him. There's options to replace Casas. It's just sort of a question of how aggressive are the Red Sox going to be? Do they need to start winning more to sort of force the front office's hand to make a move like that? And ultimately, what's going to be the future of first base long term if Casas doesn't get back to his previous self.
It's really hard to say too because I think that a lot of I don't think that I mean you can never predict an injury, right? But I think especially I think a lot of our like spending power went to Bregman, right? And I
Hmm.
think to get somebody like Anthony Rizzo, for example, he's not at the same equal I would say value as somebody like Alex Bregman. But I think so far in this season, personally, this is my opinion. I don't think they would do that. I think at this point they would either go into the minor leagues and say, okay, we're going to take up a young buck and throw him in at first base. Or what I really don't want to happen is that they take Devers off DH and they put him at first base, which I think is just going to put a whole slew. We talked about it in another video, but if you haven't watched that one, I think it would cause a whole slew of problems. One, he's Devers has gotten used to the DH spot. Finally, again, he made a whole stink about leaving third base. He's finally gotten used to DH, and if you put him at the first base slot, again, he's just gonna have to get. It's the middle of the season at this point. He's gonna have to get used to a whole new position all over again. So I don't know if that's the right. I don't think it's the right move personally. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this, and what do you think are the alternatives here of what is the
Yeah.
best case scenario?
Um, It's tough because, again, the Red Sox have options, they're playing Romy Gonzalez there. Rob Refsnyder played a little bit of first base here and there, and he's obviously, pretty good against left-handed pitching. They're trying Vaughn Grissom at third base, or at first base, excuse me, in AAA right now. So, but again, it's sort of like this situation where the Red Sox clearly weren't prepared for this. That they didn't have the backup plan ready. And I will say something, not that, Red Sox fans will be happy with me, but this situation is really a point of why that Kyle Teal trade hurt so much when they gave him up for Garrett Crochet. Now, Garrett Crochet has been worth everything. I mean, he's been tremendous this season. He is, he is as good as any pitcher the Red Sox have had since 2018 Chris Sale. But I do want to say that I think if Kyle Teal was still around right now, you could bump him up, to the major leagues, have him and Narvaez be the catchers, and then put Connor Wong, who's swings a pretty decent bat and could probably play a better first base than catcher, to first base, and maybe that solves the situation. So it's just sort of it's just a circumstance where previous moves that were made have left the Red Sox in a really thin position at this position. And right now they don't have a good answer. And so if the Red Sox are competitive come June, July, and they're in the hunt with the Yankees for the AL East, or, they look like they're a favorite for the wild card, there's going to have to be a trade swung. Again, we don't really necessarily know who the big first baseman on the market will be, but it's also compared to other positions, it's not defensively very intensive. So you could probably get You could trade for a guy who you could maybe ask him to learn first base, but regardless of how it works right now, it's just a situation where the Red Sox are just going to be treading water at an important offensive position for a while, and maybe that'll sink them. And if it doesn't, ultimately it's going to be a question of how aggressive do they get trying to fill that hole that Casas' injury has left.